Joining us now with his thoughts on this is a man dubbed the leader of the Anglophones in Quebec. He is Beryl Wiseman, the president of the Institute for Public Affairs of Montreal, and he joins us now live in Montreal. So, Mr. Wiseman, I'd like to get your thoughts on the report. Do you think this is a last-ditch effort by separatists to try and drum up any support they can for their cause?
Well, Sneha, first of all, it's good to be with you. I don't know who dubbed me that, but there you go. Look, this is hardly a last-ditch effort. You know, I'm reminded words are so important. And there is such care taken whenever any comparisons are drawn between ethnocentric PQ policies and any policies of any other regimes in history that everybody becomes self-censoring. And yet the Estates-General, funded by all our tax dollars, by the way, can use a word like ethnocide. They knew exactly what they were using when they used the word ethnocide. I'm reminded of what the American commentator, the late American commentator William Buckley would have said with words like this. He said it's sort of the difference between soft-core porn and hardcore porn, a distinction with little difference. Except in this case there's a lot of difference, because this report is not only misleading in its use of language, it's immoral, and in its statement of facts it's illegitimate. This is part of the general PQ strategy, and they said it right away when they were elected. They created a section called the, I hope I'm going to get this title right, it's not a ministry, it's a section of democratic sovereign governance that a minister named Bernard Dranville is responsible for. Now within that organization, within that subsection, their budget was just raised by $10 million just this last week. This is in a time of austerity. So their budget is now $88 million. To study what? To produce a report of lies like this? The Estates-General claims that francophones are victims of ethnocide. Whatever imperfectibility there is in Canada's bilingual and bicultural policies, we have spent so much of our treasure and talent and time to be inclusive, however imperfect. And if there are still injustices, they are by exception. While in Quebec, every PQ government has spent the talent and the treasure to do those injustices by rule.
Well, I want to ask you, the report claims that Canadian economic policies, and it points out something like 92 Canadian policies that are apparently hurting Quebec, but I know others, many business leaders in Quebec might argue that the PQ government's policies are the ones that are actually hurting Quebec. So what do you think when you talk about debt, austerity, and then $88 million to study, as you said, what?
Sneha, let's go through just some of the points. This report claims that francophones are being prejudiced against by Canada because, for example, there are 27 new ridings outside of Quebec, only 3 new ridings in Quebec. What they fail to point out is proportionally it's by representation, by population. 100,000 people per riding. It's done every 10 years by census. That's a lie. The report says that Quebec is losing money because of the taxes we pay to Canada. Quebec is the only province with the Revenue Department and collects net $8 billion a year from Canada. The report says that Quebec is being prejudiced against, is being compromised because it doesn't get ship contracts to build ships, and that they go to Nova Scotia and British Columbia. Yes, they're on the seas. That's why they get them. Yes, Quebec used to have an important shipbuilding industry in Sorel-Tracy, but it was a private company, and the Simard family, actually the in-laws of former Premier Robert Bourassa, who downscaled and closed it. There is a free market still in Quebec, much as to the chagrin of many people. This report claims that there is a threat of Anglicization in Montreal because 8.3% of the schools are English. That's down 35% just in the past 10 years.
So you've pointed out some very logical explanations for the concerns that are...
I'm pointing out, excuse me for interrupting, let's call a spade a spade. If the Quebec government can sanction, and I say that in the sure knowledge that this Estates-General report did not go out without the approval of the appropriate minister. So if the Quebec government can sanction the use of a word like ethnocide, let us talk straight. These are lies. This government has put forward the most radical agenda for the destruction of the civil rights of 1.5 million Canadians now. We're not talking about Quebec as a separate country. There are 1.5 million Canadians here who, by the Quebec Languages Office's own figures, are 86% thoroughly bilingual, conversant in French, 90% conduct their business in French. yet their civil rights as Canadians, as guaranteed by Section 133 of our Constitution, are being violated every day.
Make very good points there, and unfortunately we have to leave it there, but I want to thank you so much for joining us and offering your insight and pointing out the misleading information in this report.
Thank you, Sneha.
That is the president of the Institute for Public Affairs of Montreal, Beryl Wiseman, joining us live in Montreal.